The year was 2247, and humanity had finally reached beyond its home. Earth's children had built cities on Mars, stations orbiting Jupiter, and mining outposts scattered across the cold moons of the outer planets. They had worked hard for 2 centuries to become a spacefaring species, and they were proud of what they had achieved. Captain Daniel Murphy stood on the bridge of the Terran exploration vessel Horizon. Watching the stars through the main viewport, his ship had been traveling for 8 months, pushing deeper into unexplored space than any human vessel before. The crew of 200 had grown restless during the long journey, but Murphy kept them focused on their mission, to find new worlds for humanity to call home. "Captain, we are picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Kevin Ross from the sensor station. His voice carried a note of confusion that made Murphy turn around. "What kind of strange?" Murphy asked, walking over to look at the readings himself. "It is a signal, sir. Definitely artificial, and it is not human." The bridge fell silent. Every person stopped what they were doing and stared at Ross. For 2 centuries, humanity had searched the stars for signs of other intelligent life. They had found nothing but empty worlds and dead rocks. Now, in this distant corner of the galaxy, they had finally found what they were looking for. Murphy felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his voice calm. "Can you locate the source?" "Yes, sir. It is coming from a ship. A very large ship. It is entering the system now." The alien vessel appeared on their screens moments later. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of the Horizon, with a design that looked nothing like human engineering. Smooth curves and glowing panels covered its hull, and it moved through space with a grace that made their own ship look clumsy. Murphy ordered his crew to prepare for first. They had trained for this possibility, though none of them had truly believed it would happen. He recorded a message of peace and greeting, translating it into mathematical patterns that any intelligent species should understand. The response came within minutes. The alien ship transmitted a complex language that the Horizon's computers struggled to decode. It took several hours of back-and-forth communication before they could understand each other. But when they finally did, Murphy learned that humanity was not alone in the galaxy. Far from it. The alien called himself Kethril, and he was an ambassador of the Velthari Dominion. This organization, he explained, was a coalition of 12 spacefaring species that controlled a vast region of the galaxy. They had been watching humanity's expansion with interest and had decided to make official contact. Murphy reported everything back to Earth. The news spread across human space within hours, and the reaction was overwhelming. People celebrated in the streets. Scientists wept with joy. After centuries of wondering, humanity finally knew that they were part of a larger galactic community. Secretary General Laura Bennett was chosen to lead humanity's diplomatic mission to the Dominion. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes, known throughout human space for her skill at bringing people together. She believed deeply in the power of cooperation and peaceful dialogue. Bennett traveled to the Dominion's capital world of Velthari Prime with a delegation of scientists, artists, and diplomats. They brought gifts, samples of human music, literature, and art. They carried proposals for trade agreements and cultural exchanges. They came with open hands and open hearts, ready to join the galactic community as friends and partners. The reality they found was nothing like what they had hoped for. Velthari Council received them in a great hall filled with representatives of the 12-member species. Some were tall and thin, others short and stocky. Some had scales, others had fur or feathers. They looked at the human delegation with expressions that ranged from curiosity to obvious contempt. Ambassador Kethril introduced Bennett to the council and explained humanity's desire for peaceful relations. The council listened without much interest. When Bennett presented her proposals for mutual cooperation, the Supreme Speaker, an ancient creature named Vethril, responded with what sounded like amusement. "You wish to share your knowledge freely?" Vethril asked. "You wish to give away your resources in exchange for nothing but friendship?" "We believe that shared knowledge benefits everyone," Bennett replied. "When one species advances, all species can advance together. Several council members made sounds that Bennett realized were laughter. Others shook their heads or made gestures of dismissal. "Your species is very young," Vethril said. "You do not understand how the galaxy works. The strong take what they need from the weak. Resources are limited, and only those who can hold them deserve to keep them. This is the natural order of things." Bennett felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her diplomatic smile in place. "Perhaps humanity can offer a different perspective. Perhaps together we can build something better than the natural order." The Council granted humanity provisional membership in the Dominion, but the title meant little. Humans were classified as observers, with no voting rights and no protection under Dominion law. They were tolerated, not welcomed. Commander Nathan Cole served as the military liaison to Bennett's diplomatic mission. He was a tall man with a scarred face and hard eyes, a veteran of humanity's early colonial conflicts. While Bennett attended meetings and dinners, Cole watched and listened. He studied the Dominion's military forces and learned about its history. What he found troubled him deeply. The Dominion had existed for 3,000 years, and its history was written in blood. Species that resisted were conquered. Worlds that could not defend themselves were stripped of resources. The 12-member species had earned their positions by proving their strength through war and domination. Cole brought his concerns to Bennett one evening after a particularly frustrating day of negotiations. "They see our generosity as weakness," he told her. "Every gift we give, every offer of cooperation makes them respect us less." Bennett sighed and rubbed her tired eyes. "I know it seems that way, Nathan, but we have to try. We cannot just assume that everyone in the galaxy thinks the same way. There must be species out there who share our values." "Maybe there are," Cole admitted, "but they are not on the Council. The ones in power got there by being predators, not by being kind. And right now, they are looking at us like we are prey." Bennett shook her head. "We will prove them wrong. We will show them that there is another way." Cole did not argue further, but he did not agree either. He had seen enough of the galaxy to know that hope alone would not protect humanity. He began quietly sending reports back to Earth, warning the military command that the Dominion could not be trusted. His warnings went unheard. The people of Earth were too excited about their new galactic neighbors to listen to words of caution. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. Human artists performed for alien audiences. An alien merchant set up shops in human cities for 3 years. Humanity believed that they had found their place among the stars. They believed that peace and cooperation would lead to a bright future for everyone. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The colony world of New Geneva was a beautiful place. Located in the Proxima Centauri system, just 4 light years from Earth, it had become humanity's most successful off-world settlement. Rolling hills covered in green grass stretched toward distant mountains. Rivers of clean water flowed through fertile valleys. 2 million people called this world home. Governor Samuel Price stood on the balcony of the Colonial Administration Building, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. He was a practical man in his 60s, more farmer than politician, and he had spent 20 years helping to build this colony from a handful of prefab buildings into a thriving civilization. The people of New Geneva were good people. They worked hard, raised families, and looked toward the future with hope. Most of them had never even seen an alien in person. Though they followed the news about humanity's new galactic neighbors with interest, that evening, Price received a message from Earth that changed everything. The Korthax Imperium, one of the Dominion's founding species, had filed a claim with the Velthari Council. They argued that the Proxima Centauri system fell within their historical territory and demanded that humanity surrender all rights to New Geneva. The Council had ruled in favor of the Korthax. Price read the message 3 times before he believed it. He immediately contacted Secretary General Bennett on Velthari Prime. "This is impossible," he said. "We have been here for 15 years. We built this colony with our own hands. How can they simply give it away?" Bennett's face on the screen looked tired and worried. "I am fighting this with everything I have, Samuel. But the Council does not recognize our rights? Under Dominion law, provisional members are subjects, not equals. The Kordax have priority. What about the people? Price demanded. What happens to 2 million human beings? The Kordax have agreed to allow a peaceful evacuation. You will have time to relocate everyone to other colonies. Price felt cold anger rising in his chest. And if we refuse to leave? This is our home. We have a right to defend it. Bennett was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with sadness. Samuel, I am begging you. Please, do not resist. The Korthax fleet is already on its way. We do not age. Of the military strength to stop them. If you fight, you will die. All of you. The communication ended, and Price sat alone in his office for a long time. He thought about the children in the schools, the families in the farms, the elderly in the care homes. He thought about everything his people had built, everything they would lose. He began making plans for evacuation. The Korthax fleet arrived 2 days later. 12 massive warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took up positions in orbit around New Geneva. Their commander, Admiral Zethvern, broadcast a message to the planet below. Humans of New Geneva, you are occupying territory that belongs to the Korthax Imperium. You have 6 hours to evacuate your population. Any humans remaining on the surface after this deadline will be considered hostile invaders and dealt with accordingly. Price contacted the fleet immediately. Admiral, I am Governor Price. We are cooperating fully with the evacuation order, but 6 hours is not enough time. We have 2 million people here, including children, elderly, and sick, who cannot be moved quickly. Please, give us more time. His face appeared on the screen. He was a reptilian creature with dark scales and cold yellow eyes. He looked at Price the way someone might look at an insect. 6 hours, he repeated. Not 1 minute more. Price organized the evacuation as fast as humanly possible. Every ship capable of leaving atmosphere was loaded with people. Families were separated as parents put their children on departing vessels. The spaceport became a scene of chaos and desperate goodbyes. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos commanded the patrol frigate Stalwart, one of only 3 military vessels in the system. She had been born on New Geneva and had joined the Terran Defense Force to protect her home. Now she watched helplessly as her people fled for their lives. Her ship was small and lightly armed, designed for patrol duties rather than combat. Against 12 Korthax warships, she had no chance. But she stayed in orbit, recording everything, transmitting every moment back to Earth. The 6 hours passed too quickly. When the deadline arrived, over 500,000 people remained on the surface. They were still loading ships, still trying to save as many as they could. Admiral Zethvern did not give them another minute. The first plasma bombardment struck the capital city. Buildings that had taken years to construct were vaporized in seconds. Thousands died in the initial blast. More died in the fires that followed. Santos watched in horror as her homeworld burned. She screamed into her communication system, begging the Korthax to stop, but they ignored her completely. The bombardment continued for 47 minutes. Every major population center was targeted. Every city, every town, every village. When it was over, 1.8 million human beings were dead. Santos ordered her ship to attack. She knew it was suicide, but she could not simply watch and do nothing. The Stalwart fired everything it had at the nearest Korthax vessel, barely scratching its shields before return fire tore her small ship apart. Her last transmission reached Earth. They killed everyone. They killed everyone. Do not let them get away with this. The footage of the massacre spread across human space within hours. People watched in stunned silence as their colony burned. They saw the bodies in the streets, the children who never made it to the ships, the hospitals full of patients who could not be moved. Secretary General Bennett saw the footage in her office on Veltari Prime. She collapsed into her chair and wept. Everything she had believed, everything she had worked for, had been proven wrong in the most terrible way possible. Commander Nathan Cole found her there an hour later. He had rushed from the military liaison office as soon as he heard the news. He stood in the doorway, his face pale, but his eyes hard. "I warned you," he said quietly. "I told you they would do this." Bennett looked up at him with red eyes. "I know. I did not listen. I thought I could change them." "You cannot change predators into friends," Cole replied. "You can only make them fear you enough to leave you alone." On Earth, the Parliament held an emergency session. Admiral Catherine Walsh, commander of the Terran Defense Force, was called to address the assembly. She was a woman in her 60s, with iron-gray hair and a reputation for speaking her mind. "We have tried peace," she told them. "We extended our hand in friendship, and they slapped it away. We offered cooperation, and they answered with genocide. 2 million of our people are dead because we believed in the goodness of strangers." The chamber was silent. Representatives who had argued for deeper ties with the Dominion now sat with their heads bowed in shame. "We have a choice to make," Walsh continued. "We can accept this. We can bow our heads and hope that they do not come for more of our worlds. Or we can stand up and make them understand that humanity will not be prey." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in its history, United Earth Parliament declared war on an alien species. Walsh returned to her command center and began mobilizing every resource humanity had. Factories that built consumer goods would now build weapons. Scientists who studied the stars would now find ways to win battles. Every man and woman who could serve would be called to duty. The age of peace was over. The age of war had begun. The destruction of New Geneva changed humanity in ways that no one could have predicted. Across Earth and every colony, people who had never thought about military service lined up at recruitment centers. Factories that had produced luxury goods shut down overnight and reopened as weapons manufacturers. Universities redirected their research toward military applications. It was as if an entire species had woken up from a peaceful dream and discovered that they were surrounded by wolves. Dr. Henry Brooks had spent 30 years studying theoretical physics at the Stanford Research Institute. His work on energy fields had earned him 3 major scientific awards. He had dreamed of using his knowledge to solve humanity's energy problems. He was a gentle man who believed in the power of science to improve lives. His daughter, Emma, had been a teacher on New Geneva. She had been 28 years old, newly married, and expecting her first child. She had stayed behind to help evacuate her students and had died when the Korthox bombardment hit her school, the day after Brooks learned of her death. He walked into Admiral Walsh's office and offered his services. Within a week, he was leading the Prometheus Project, humanity's most secret weapons research program. The man who had wanted to bring light to the world now worked to bring fire to humanity's enemies. He was not alone. Thousands of scientists, engineers, and technicians joined the war effort. Some had lost family members on New Geneva. Others simply understood that their species was fighting for survival. They worked around the clock, sleeping in their labs, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Within 18 months, they had achieved miracles. Human ships had always been slower than Dominion vessels. The alien races had spent thousands of years developing their faster-than-light technology, and humanity had only recently figured out the basics. But Brooks and his team found a way to improve the human drive systems, making them faster and more maneuverable than anything the Dominion had ever seen. They also developed new weapons. Plasma cannons that could punch through Korthox shields. Missiles that could track enemy vessels across vast distances. Electronic warfare systems that could confuse and disable alien targeting computers. Admiral Walsh watched the transformation of the Terran Defense Force with grim satisfaction. She had entered the military as a young woman during the colonial conflicts on Mars, and she had spent her entire career preparing for a war she hoped would never come. Now that it had arrived, she was ready. She promoted Nathan Cole to the rank of Fleet Admiral and gave him command of the newly formed First Strike Fleet. Cole had been warning about the Dominion for years, and Walsh trusted his judgment more than anyone else's. He was exactly the kind of leader humanity needed: intelligent, ruthless, and completely dedicated to victory. Cole assembled his fleet at a secret location in the outer solar system. 200 warships, each one crewed by men and women who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. They trained constantly, practicing battle formations and attack patterns until they could execute them in their sleep. On the day of the attack, Cole addressed his crews through the fleet communication system. "Many of you lost friends or family on New Geneva," he said. "I know the pain you carry. I carry it too. But this mission is not about revenge. It is about survival. If we do not show the galaxy that humanity can fight back, they will come for us again. They will burn our worlds one by one until there is nothing left." He paused, looking at the faces of his officers on the bridge of his flagship. "Today we teach them fear. Today, we show them what happens when they underestimate the human race." The first strike fleet jumped into Korthok space without warning. Their new drive systems bypassed every detection network the Dominion had in place. The border station, at Veth Prime, a massive military installation that had guarded Korthok's territory for centuries, had no idea the humans were coming until plasma fire started tearing through its hull. The battle lasted less than an hour. The Korthok's defenders fought back, but they were overwhelmed by the speed and ferocity of the human attack. Their shields failed under the concentrated fire of Cole's fleet. Their weapons could not track the fast-moving human ships. By the time reinforcements arrived from deeper in Korthok space, Veth Prime was a field of debris. Cole did not stop there. He pushed his fleet deeper into enemy territory, striking military bases and supply depots. He avoided civilian targets, focusing only on installations that supported the Korthok's war machine. Each victory sent a message across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer prey. Commander Lisa Harper led the ground forces that accompanied the fleet. She was a former Marine who had served in some of humanity's most difficult colonial conflicts, and she had trained her troops for years in preparation for exactly this kind of war. When the fleet reached Korthok's Prime, the enemy's homeworld, Harper led the assault on their primary military headquarters. Her Marines landed in drop pods, hitting the ground at high speed and immediately moving into action. The Korthok soldiers were larger and stronger than humans, but they had never faced an enemy that fought the way Harper's Marines did. Human troops moved in small, coordinated teams, supporting each other and adapting to changing conditions. They used the terrain to their advantage, setting traps and ambushes that caught the Korthoks off guard. More importantly, humans fought with a fury that the Korthoks had never encountered. These were soldiers who had watched their people die on New Geneva. They had trained for this moment, and they showed no fear. The Korthok's defenders broke and ran. Soldiers who had spent their careers conquering weaker species suddenly discovered what it felt like to be the ones running for their lives. Within 6 months of the first attack, the Korthok's Imperium surrendered unconditionally. Fleet. Admiral Cole met with the Korthok's leadership in the ruins of their military headquarters. Admiral Zethvern, the same commander who had ordered the bombardment of New Geneva, was brought before him in chains. "You will disarm completely," Cole told him. "Your weapons will be destroyed. Your warships will be dismantled. You will pay reparations to every species you have ever wronged. And your leaders, including you, will stand trial for war crimes." Zethvern hissed in anger. "This violates galactic custom. Conquered peoples have rights under Dominion law." Cole leaned forward, his face cold. "Galactic custom murdered 2 million of my people. We are writing new customs now." The trial of the Korthok's war criminals was broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time, species that had lived under Dominion rule for centuries watched as one of the great powers was brought to justice. They watched humans, these young newcomers who had arrived in the galaxy only a few years ago, stand in judgment over those who had considered themselves masters of the stars. Something changed in the hearts of the oppressed peoples. Something that had been dead for generations began to stir again. Hope, the Velthari. Council reacted to the Korthok's defeat with a mixture of shock and denial. They had expected the humans to be crushed easily. Instead, one of their founding members had been humbled in a matter of months. Supreme Speaker Vethril called an emergency session to discuss the human threat. Some council members argued for immediate military action against Earth. Others warned that the humans had proven more dangerous than expected and counseled caution. They debated and argued while humanity continued to grow stronger. New ships rolled out of the factories every day. More soldiers completed their training and joined the ranks. And across the galaxy, messages of support began arriving from species that had suffered under Dominion rule. The war was just beginning. The fall of the Korthax. Imperium sent shockwaves through every corner of the galaxy. For 3,000 years, the Velthari Dominion had ruled without serious challenge. Its member species had grown comfortable in their power, believing that no one could ever threaten their position. The humans had shattered that belief in a matter of months. The remaining 11 council species convened an emergency session to decide what to do about this new threat. They argued for days, some demanding immediate war against humanity, others urging caution. In the end, they could not agree on anything. What they did not expect was rebellion from within their own ranks. Ambassador. Thalassa was a Valorian, a member of a species that had been conquered by the Dominion over 500 years ago. Her people had once been proud and independent, but generations of subjugation had broken their spirit. They served as laborers and servants throughout Dominion space, looked down upon by the ruling species. Thalassa had watched the trial of the Korthax war criminals with tears in her eyes. She had seen humans, these young newcomers, stand up against tyranny and win. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to believe that things could change. She traveled in secret to meet with Secretary General Laura Bennett, who had returned to active diplomacy with a harder edge than before. The two women met in a small room on a neutral station, far from Dominion surveillance. "Your people have done something remarkable," Thalassa said. "You have shown the galaxy that the Dominion can be defeated." Bennett nodded slowly. She had aged 10 years in the months since New Geneva. The idealistic diplomat who had believed in peaceful cooperation was gone, replaced by someone who understood that peace sometimes required strength. "We fought for survival," Bennett replied. "The Korthax left us no choice." "The Dominion has left many species no choice," Thalassa said. "My people, the Malthari, the Kasani, the Druin, and dozens of others. We have all suffered under their rule. We have all dreamed of freedom." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If humanity is willing to fight for more than just itself, you will find allies waiting in every corner of the galaxy." Bennett brought this information to Fleet. Admiral Cole and Admiral Walsh. The three of them studied the intelligence that Lhasa had provided. Details about Dominion military strength, supply routes, communication networks, and most importantly, the location of subjugated species who might be willing to rise up against their masters. A new strategy emerged from these discussions. Humanity would not simply defend itself against the Dominion. They would dismantle it entirely, freeing the oppressed and building alliances with those who had suffered under galactic tyranny. The Terran Liberation. Fleet was formed under the command of Rear Admiral Christopher Hayes. His mission was to strike at Dominion targets while reaching out to subjugated species and offering them a choice: join humanity in the fight for freedom, or continue living as slaves. The response exceeded all expectations. The Malthari were the first to join. They were a race of skilled engineers who had been forced to build warships for the Dominion for centuries. When Hayes offered them freedom and a chance to fight back, they seized it with both hands. Within weeks, Malthari engineers were working alongside human technicians, improving ship designs and sharing knowledge accumulated over generations. The Kessani followed soon after. Their species had developed some of the most advanced communication technology in the galaxy, but the Dominion had taken control of it and used it to monitor subject populations. Now the Kasani turned those skills against their former masters, intercepting Dominion communications and sharing everything with their new human allies. The Druin were perhaps the most surprising allies. They were a warrior race, large and powerful, who had served as shock troops for the Dominion for centuries. The Dominion had told them that they were fighting for honor and glory, but the truth was that they had been slaves like everyone else. When Captain Benjamin Shaw and his Special Operations Unit Spectre Squad landed on the Druon homeworld, they expected a fight. Instead, they found a population that had been deceived and manipulated for generations. Shaw showed them the evidence, the records of Dominion lies and exploitation, and the Druin reacted with fury. not at the humans, but at those who had enslaved their minds. 30,000 Druid warriors defected to the human cause in a single day. Shaw and Spectre. Squad continued their mission across Dominion space. They sabotaged supply lines, destroyed communication relays, and assassinated key military leaders. Wherever they went, they spread the message of liberation. The Dominion was not invincible, and freedom was possible for anyone willing to fight for it. The Velthari Council watched their empire crumbling and grew. Desperate. Species that had been obedient for centuries were suddenly rebelling. Worlds that had provided resources were now refusing to cooperate. The human fleet, now reinforced by allied vessels, was pushing deeper into Dominion territory every month. Supreme Commander Vethril, the leader of the Dominion military, proposed a final solution. Deep within the archives of Velthari Prime, there existed a weapon that had never been used. It was called the Omega Protocol, a planet-killing device developed in the early days of the Dominion and kept in reserve. For exactly this kind of emergency, the Council debated for 3 days before voting to deploy the weapon. Their target would be Earth itself. If they could destroy humanity's homeworld, they believed the rebellion would collapse and order would be restored. Dr. Henry Brooks had spent months improving humanity's intelligence gathering systems. The same technology that allowed Kasani Communications experts to intercept Dominion messages now gave humans access to the most secret channels of their enemies. When the Omega Protocol deployment order was transmitted, Brooks was the first to see it. He rushed to Admiral Walsh's command center with the data, his face white with fear. "They are going to destroy Earth," he told her. "The weapon is already being prepared on Velthari Prime. We have 3 weeks, maybe less." Walsh studied the information carefully. She had known that the Dominion would eventually strike back, but a planet-killing weapon was something she had not anticipated. Earth was humanity's heart. Its population of 12 billion people, its cultural treasures, its history. If it was destroyed, humanity might survive, but it would never recover. "Then we attack first," she said. "We take the fight to Velthari Prime before they can launch that weapon." Fleet Admiral Cole received his orders within the hour. Every ship humanity and its allies could muster would be assembled for the largest military operation in galactic history. Their target was the Dominion's capital world. The seat of its power for 3,000 years, Cole knew the odds were against them. The Dominion had been gathering its remaining forces around Velthari Prime, creating a defensive fleet of over 8,000 warships. The Allied fleet numbered only 3,000. They would be outnumbered more than 2 to 1. But they had something the Dominion did not: a reason to fight that was worth dying for. Cole addressed his commanders through the fleet communication network. "We are not fighting for territory or resources," he told them. "We are fighting for the right to exist, for the freedom of every species that has ever lived under Dominion tyranny, for the children of Earth who will never be born if we fail." He paused, looking at the faces of allies from a dozen different species. Humans, Valorians, Molthari, Kessani, Druin, and more. All of them united against a common enemy. "Today we finish what we started. Today we bring down the Dominion." The fleet jumped toward Velthari Prime. The Allied fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Velthari system. Before them lay the heart of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. 8,000 Dominion warships formed a defensive wall around the capital world, their weapons charged and ready. Fleet Admiral Cole stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the enemy formation. He had fought in dozens of battles over the past year, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Everything humanity had worked for, everything they had sacrificed, came down to this single confrontation. "All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Cole," he broadcast to the Allied fleet. "Remember why we are here. Remember New Geneva? Remember every world the Dominion has destroyed, every species they have enslaved. Today, we end their reign of terror." The battle began. Admiral Walsh coordinated the strategic elements from her command center on Earth. watching the engagement through real-time data feeds. She had divided the Allied fleet into 6 battle groups, each with specific objectives. The main force would engage the Dominion fleet directly, while smaller groups would attempt to punch through to the orbital weapons platform where the Omega protocol was being prepared. The Dominion fleet advanced to meet the Allied attack. Plasma fire lit up the darkness of space as thousands of ships exchanged devastating volleys. Allied vessels exploded, their crews dying instantly. Dominion ships broke apart under concentrated fire. Within minutes, the space around Velthury Prime became a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. Captain Rebecca Torres commanded the assault carrier Defiance, the largest vessel in the Allied fleet. Her ship carried 200 fighter craft, each one piloted by the best aviators humanity had trained. Torres pushed her carrier into the heart of the Dominion formation, ignoring the damage her vessel was taking, focused only on getting her fighters close enough to make a difference. All squadrons, launch. She ordered. Human fighters poured from the Defiance's launch bays like angry hornets. They dove between the massive Dominion warships, their small size making them difficult to target. Lieutenant Commander Paul Martinez led the bomber squadron, his craft loaded with special weapons designed by Dr. Brooks and the Prometheus. Project Team. Their target was the Omega weapon platform, a massive station orbiting high above Velthury Prime. Its shields were the strongest the Dominion could produce, powered by reactors that could supply energy to an entire planet. To reach the weapon itself, those shields had to come down. Martinez guided his squadron through a storm of defensive fire. Ships exploded around him as Dominion gunners found their marks. He lost half his pilots in the first pass, but the survivors pressed on. Shield generator in sight, Martinez reported. Beginning attack run. His bombers released their payloads against the station's shield generators. The weapons punched through the station's armor and detonated inside the generator housing. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the station's shields flickered and died. Martinez did not survive to see it. A Dominion fighter caught him from behind, its weapons tearing through his cockpit. But his sacrifice had opened the way for the ground assault. On the surface of Velthury Prime, Commander Lisa Harper led the largest ground assault humanity had ever attempted. Drop pods carrying human marines and Druid warriors fell through the atmosphere like metal rain. They landed in the shadow of the Citadel, the ancient fortress that served as the Dominion's seat of power. The Citadel's defenders fought with desperate fury. They knew that if the fortress fell, the Dominion would fall with it. Harper's forces pushed forward through corridors filled with smoke and blood. Every room had to be taken by force. Every corner could hide an enemy. Valorian resistance fighters joined the assault, emerging from hiding places they had maintained for generations. They knew the Citadel's secret passages and hidden entrances, guiding the human marines through routes defenders did not expect. Harper herself led the final push toward the command center. She had been wounded twice, her armor scorched by plasma fire, but she refused to stop. The Citadel had to fall before the Omega weapon could be launched in orbit. Fleet Admiral Cole faced his own desperate battle. The Dominion fleet was larger, but the Allied ships were faster and better coordinated. Cole exploited every weakness in the enemy formation, concentrating his fire on vulnerable points and withdrawing before the Dominion could respond. But time was running out. Intelligence reports indicated that the Omega weapon was almost ready to fire. If it launched, Earth would be destroyed in a matter of hours. Cole made a decision. He ordered his flagship to break away from the main battle and head directly for the Omega control ship, the vessel that would actually fire the weapon. It was a suicide mission. Cole saw no other choice. His ship fought through layers of Dominion defenders, taking hit after hit. Systems failed one by one. Crew members died at their stations. But the flagship kept moving, its pilot refusing to give up. When Cole's ship was too damaged to fight any longer, he led a boarding party across the gap between vessels. 50 Marines in combat armor, jumping through the vacuum of space to land on the hull of the Omega control ship. They cut their way inside and fought through the corridors. Cole lost men with every step, but he pushed forward. He knew that Supreme Commander Vethral was on this ship, personally overseeing the weapon that would destroy Earth, he found the Dominion leader in the control room. His clawed hands hovering over the firing controls. Vethril saw Cole enter and smiled, a cold expression that showed no fear. "You are too late, human," he said. "The weapon is armed. In 30 seconds, your homeworld will cease to exist." Cole raised his weapon, but Vethril was faster. The Dominion commander's reflexes, honed by centuries of combat, allowed him to dodge the shot and close the distance between them. He struck Cole hard, sending the human admiral crashing into a control panel. They fought hand-to-hand in the flickering light of the control room. Vethril was stronger, but Cole was driven by something the Dominion commander could not understand: love for his people and fury at what had been done to them. Cole managed to draw his combat blade just as Vethril pinned him against the wall. With his last strength, he drove the blade upward, through the commander's chest and into his heart. Vethril looked down at the blade with an expression of pure disbelief. He tried to speak, but only blood came from his mouth. He collapsed, dead before he hit the floor. Cole crawled to the control panel and found the abort sequence. His hands were shaking, his vision blurring from blood loss. But he managed to enter the code with 3 seconds to spare. The Omega weapon powered down. On the surface, Harper's forces broke through to the Citadel's command center moments later. The Dominion leadership, seeing their weapon disabled and their supreme commander dead, surrendered unconditionally. The battle was over. The Dominion had fallen. In the weeks that followed, representatives from 47 species gathered in the ruins of the Citadel. Secretary General Laura Bennett stood before them, her gray hair now completely white, her face lined with the weight of everything she had experienced. "We came to the stars seeking friendship," she said. "We were answered with genocide. We fought not for conquest, but for survival, for justice, for the right of all species to live free from tyranny." She looked out at the assembled representatives, beings of every shape and size, all of them sharing this moment together. "We have an opportunity to build something new. Not an empire built on domination, but a confederation built on equality. A place where no species can be enslaved, where no world can be destroyed on a tyrant's whim, where disputes are resolved through genuine dialogue rather than force." Fleet Admiral Cole, still recovering from his wounds, rose to address the assembly. "The Dominion ruled through fear," he said. "They believed that the strong have the right to prey upon the weak. We reject that belief. Strength means nothing if it is not used to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The representatives voted unanimously to form the Galactic Confederation. A new charter was signed, guaranteeing the rights of all member species and establishing mechanisms for peaceful resolution of conflicts. 10 years later, a memorial was built on New Geneva. The world had been rebuilt from its ashes, its fields green again, its cities rising toward the sky. 2 million names were carved into walls of black marble that stretched for miles. At the center of the memorial stood a statue of a human hand reaching upward, open in friendship. Below it, an inscription read, "They died believing in peace. We honor them by building a galaxy worthy of that belief." Laura Bennett, now retired from public life, visited the memorial on its dedication day. She walked slowly along the walls of names, remembering the colony she had failed to protect, the people whose deaths had changed everything. Fleet Admiral Cole walked beside her, his hair now gray, his face carrying scars from battles too numerous to count. They stopped at a section of the wall where the names of the children were listed. "We tried peace," Bennett said quietly. "They forced us to war." Cole nodded. "And now we have earned the right to try peace again. Real peace, this time, built on strength and justice, not just hope." They stood together in silence as the sun set over New Geneva, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Around them, representatives from across the galaxy had come to pay their respects. Humans, Valorians, Molthri, Kessini, Druin, and dozens of other species, all united in memory of what had been lost and hope for what was yet to come. The galaxy had forced humanity to become warriors. But in the end, they had fought not to conquer, but to build something better. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all.